Today, we're going to step back in time to October 1997. Tempest had just been released for Magic the Gathering, a new expansion with a whole bunch of new cards. And back then, there was no spoiler season, so we were all, trying to figure out what to do. We didn't have 2 weeks in advance to plan ahead and figure out what we were going to buy. It was all a surprise. So, at the time, I was playing Type 1, which you might know as Vintage, at my local game store, and doing pretty good. And this is one of the decks that I came up with to play back then. So, just wanted to kind of do a deck tech and show you all what it was like. So the main idea here was that I wanted to play stuff quickly. So that was the Dark Rituals and the Lotus Petals. I also put the Mox Emerald here and the Soul Ring. Obviously, a Mox Jet would have been a better choice, but I didn't own one, so I worked with what I had. These aren't the exact cards that I played with back then. Some of them are, like these two are. But I had a lot of reprints back then, so this is a reconstruction of what I played back then, as far as I could remember. So I wanted to play fast things, and I wanted to have defense against creatures, so that's what the Royal Assassins and the Sorceress Queens are about, and also the Icy Manipulators. And then I also wanted to have a lot of creatures, and even better if they had some kind of evasion that made them difficult to block. So Royal Assassin, obviously a great card. Tap to destroy any tapped creature. Works great. Keeps my opponent's board empty of creatures so that my stuff can get through. Icy Manipulator. Tap any land, creature, or artifact. It's incredibly useful, and one of the things that I like to do with it is tap my opponent's creatures so that I can kill them with the Royal Assassin. Now, if I don't have the Assassin out, I can still use it to tap the creature, so it keeps their creature sort of out of my way. It also works on artifacts and lands, which is sometimes useful. Back then, you could tap an artifact to shut it off. So the Royal Assassins here, the Sorceress Queens here, you can tap those to make any creature 0/2. Now, that's great for defending against creatures, that are coming at you. It's even better if you're making their blocking creature a 0/2. So if I'm swinging with something like this Juggernaut here, I'm making an attack, and then they decide to block it because they don't want to take the 5 damage, then I can just make their creature 0/2, and it won't be hurting my Juggernaut. And it will probably die. So I can get rid of their creatures that way. So this really helped against creatures, which was a large part of the metagame there at that time. Now, that was kind of my defense. I also had this Zuran Orb as defense. This is great late game because if you are getting low on life, you can just sacrifice some of your lands that you've been, drawing and playing throughout the game that you probably don't need anyway. You can just sacrifice those for just enough life to stay alive, and you can do it at instant speed, so it works pretty well. You don't have to sacrifice, in advance or plan ahead too far. Demonic Tutor, obviously, a great choice. It gets whatever you need. So down here we have Black Knight. You're probably familiar with that. Protection from white and first strike, 2/2 for 2 mana. And we have Dothi Slayer, which was a really kind of a powerful card. It's a 2/2 for 2 mana, kind of like the Black Knight. It doesn't have first strike or protection from white. Instead, it has Shadow. So it can only be blocked by other creatures with Shadow. and at the time, Tempest was the only set that had Shadow. So there were actually some people playing cards with Shadow, but in the years since then, Shadow has become even less used. So it's practically an unblockable creature, these days. So 2/2 for 2 mana, and the Unholy Strength can go on them. In particular, the Dark Ritual over here, I can turn 1 Dark Ritual, play one of these guys with an Unholy Strength on it. So I'll have a 4/3 creature, turn 1. And that's pretty good, especially if it's this guy when he, probably can't block him. But 4/3 with First Strike is also really cool. Similarly, with the Lotus Petals and the Dark Rituals, all this fast mana, it's not that unusual to play a Juggernaut turn 1. And I might even Unholy Strength it on turn 2 before I attack. So, I have a 7/4 creature on turn 2, and I'm swinging with it. It's pretty quick. It's fast enough that it could get out before the control decks. I mean, Force of Will was around back then, but it wasn't quite huge yet. It was getting there. So a lot of counterspell decks, you had to have 2 mana to counterspell something. And if I went first, or even if I went second, and they, had 1 land in play, then I could usually speed something out that could, win me the game before they could reach the point where they could counterspell things. Over here I have Grave Servitude. 2 mana, gives a creature +3/-1. It can be played as an enchantment or as an instant. I find this a really versatile card. It's great. I prefer to play it as an enchantment on my own creature. So, maybe this guy who they can't block because they don't have creatures with Shadow, let's make him a 5/1, and he'll just sit there and do 5 damage to the opponent every turn. That makes for a short game. The thing that I really like about it, honestly, is the -1 at the end. A lot of people don't think about this, but I use this as a kill spell. So if my opponent had something like a Royal Assassin, or some, 1/1 utility creature, maybe a Prodigal Sorcerer or something, or another Sorceress Queen, I can kill it with this. That's a kill spell. I'll give it +3/-1 and it'll die. It's also useful as an instant if I need to, get that extra 3 damage in on an unblocked creature in order to win the game. But I would prefer to play it as an enchantment and get a repeated effect every turn from it. I'm not actually sure if this was in this deck back then, because like I said, this is a reconstruction from what I can remember, and I'm a little iffy on these 2 card slots. I'm pretty sure everything else is correct. But I know that I did use this card a lot around that time frame, so it probably was here. So next we have these 4 creatures, and they're just some bigger creatures for the top end of the mana curve, something to play late game. I could potentially play them on turn 1, double Dark Ritual, or there's a variety of ways to get 5 mana on turn 1 here. So Singer Vampire, maybe you're familiar with that. You're probably not familiar with these others: Morinfin, Gallowbraid, and Kezardry. So Morinfin is a 5/4 flyer with cumulative upkeep 1 life. Similarly, we have Gallowbraid, which is a 5/5 trample with cumulative upkeep 1 life. Now, cumulative upkeep 1 life is a pretty steep price to pay if you're planning on having it in play for very long. But with such a big creature, I figured I would either win the game or they would kill the creature before the cumulative upkeep really did that much damage to me for these people. So, this is a 5/5 4, 5. Sorry, this is a 5/4 and this is a 5/5. So they're doing 5 damage per turn. So 4 turns, they're doing 20 points of damage. My cumulative upkeep cost is 1 on the first turn, 2 on the second turn, 3 on the third turn, and 4 on the fourth turn. So they do 20 points of damage and I take 10 points. You know, it's a lot. But if I already have some damage being dealt by these other people, some pressure put on by my other cards in the deck, I probably don't have to do 20 points of damage to win the game with these. So, turn 1, you know, if I can have a 5/4 flyer or a 5/5 trample and, you know, be beaten down with them, that's okay. And I can always choose not to pay the cumulative upkeep. The upkeep cost is, you know, something that you choose to pay. So I could choose not to pay it and let the creature die. Maybe that's okay, having done, you know, 10 damage if I got something else I want to do and not lose life. Or maybe I've played Azurian Orb and I'm not worried about it, because I can just sacrifice some lands. So, you know, early game it's nice, but also late game. If I've got some things out and I just need to, you know, play that one more creature so that they can't block everything, and here we go. Here's something that has trample or flying, you know, something that's hard to block. Similarly, the Singer Vampire has flying, even though it's only a 4/4. Kezardry, a little iffy on that one. So it's nice, 4/4, first strike. He only takes 4 mana, so you can get him out turn 1 easier, just like the Juggernaut, you know. So 4/4, first strike for 4 mana. During your upkeep, if you control no creatures, he deals 4 damage to you. Sorry, if your opponents control no creatures. Now, I did like to destroy creatures here, but I could also leave the creature in play and tap it with the Icy Manipulator, or just make it 0/2 with the Sorcerer's Queen. A lot of times, this would get me in situations where the opponent would intentionally block my Juggernaut trying to kill their creatures, so that I would have the only creatures on the battlefield and take 4 damage. Now, that's really not thinking long term, because if I have the only creatures on the battlefield, I'm probably winning the game. So, you know, it worked for me. But a lot of people didn't play these because of their drawbacks. And I admit they're not great cards, but I had some empty slots in the deck to fill, and I thought that I needed something with a higher casting cost for late game, and that's just what I grabbed. I wanted to try them out. They were fairly new cards at the time. So it was pretty basic, really repetitive and consistent, and I won several tournaments with this. Yeah, that's how it went. So we got 14 Swamps, 4 Lotus Petals. It's a great card. That's pretty much how it went. And like I said, I won a few tournaments with it, and I couldn't play too many tournaments in a row with it because in such a small, it was like a local game store. So the meta game was kind of small. It didn't include a lot of people. And because of that, it didn't take very long for your opponents to realize what you were playing and build their deck against that. And for that reason, I couldn't play a single deck for very long. I had to constantly innovate and change and switch to different decks. So you could play the same deck maybe 2 tournaments in a row. One tournament, you do all right. The second tournament, if you win the second tournament in a row with the deck, people are going to come prepared the next week. And that's when you switch and make their preparations useless because they're prepared for the wrong deck. So yeah, that's metagame. Now, so I liked the idea. I always kind of kept it in mind. Like I said, it would speed past control decks and things like that, and it would overwhelm creature-based decks also. So it worked pretty well at the time for what I was up against. 9 months later, another set came out called Exodus. Now, Stronghold was in the middle, and that didn't really affect this deck much, the way that I played it and built it. But when Exodus came out in June of '98, it had a card that really inspired me to put this back together and play it again. And that card was Carnifage. So, I also tried Hidden Horror. So what did I do to fit these in here? I think I took out the Grave Servitudes and replaced a Morinfen. Replaced a Morinfen with a Hidden Horror. So this is a 4/4 creature that only takes 3 mana to play. You have to discard another creature from your hand, but this was easier to play on turn 1 with a Dark Ritual. And on turn 1 I was likely to have a creature in my hand that I could discard. So yeah, so this was, a better chance at a 4/4 on turn 1, which could easily become a 6/5 on turn 2 before I attack. So Morinfen was out, Hidden Horror was in. I think I got rid of the Grave Servitude and a couple other things. Probably these. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure, but I think one Icy Manipulator because it has kind of a high casting cost, and one Sorcerer's Queen because it's not as good as the Royal Assassin to play for Carnifage. Yeah, 5 cards out, 5 cards in. So, here we go, the Exodus version. Still really fast, all this mana acceleration, but the main changes here are the Hidden Horror, which I already explained, and the Carnifage. So it's a 2/2 for 1 mana, and during your upkeep, pay 1 life or tap it. This was a strong card when it came out. It didn't take too long for people to figure that out. I could easily play this and a Black Knight or Dothi Slayer on turn 1 with a Dark Ritual. There's just a whole bunch of things you can do on turn 1 with this deck. Strong things. You put out a lot of creatures or a massive creature. And so it's just a great card. It puts that much more pressure on my opponent. And, I won tournaments with this also. Moving on, years later, around 2012, I finally came back and revisited this deck and changed a few more things, of course, when I rebuilt it. And the things that I changed were, first of all, I was disappointed to learn that Lotus Petal had been restricted. I wasn't surprised, really, because it's a very powerful card. To have 4 of those in your deck is pretty great. So I replaced the 3 Lotus Petals that I had to take out with a Chrome Mox, a Mox Diamond, and a Mana Crypt. All 0 cost, all providing mana with some amount of drawbacks. And that was my fast mana to fix what I had lost there. I'm not sure if it's really better. It's probably not. I think I'd prefer the Lotus Petals, and that's, why they're restricted. So with the Chrome Mox, you have to get rid of a black card in your hand, which was alright. I could discard, even a Dark Ritual would be okay. It's a black card, and sometimes it's better to discard a instant or sorcery or interrupt than a permanent, because a permanent stays in play and you can do a lot with it every turn. But discarding the Dark Ritual wasn't too big of a deal. If it, I lose the ability to get 3 mana instantly, but I gain 1 black, every turn. Mox Diamond, I have to discard a land, which it's okay. It still speeds me up, It's like dropping 2 lands on 1 turn. And then Mana Crypt, that's a dangerous card. I actually lost some games because of Mana Crypt, because of that coin flip. There used to be ways to get around that, and with the way the rules work these days, you can't really get around it as well. The way to get around it before was artifacts shut off when they tapped. And that was before 6th edition, I think. Yeah. So in the 6th edition rules update, they made it so that artifacts no longer shut off when they were tapped. But before that, you could tap the Mana Crypt for mana during your upkeep, and because it was tapped, the coin flip ability turned off. They probably didn't plan it that way, but that's the way that they wrote it, and that's the way it was played. So if you had an upkeep cost that you needed to pay during your upkeep, the Mana Crypt could be used to do that and avoid the coin flip. One of the things that was popular way back in the day was to use it to untap mana vaults. But that's kind of a tangent. That's not really what I'm trying to talk about here. So that's what I replaced the Lotus Petal with, because I had to do something there. And the other card that I wanted in was Vampiric Link. What did I replace for the Vampiric Link? Let's see. It was it was a Royal Assassin, and these Icy Manipulators, I took all those out and put in 4 Vampiric Links. Maybe that wasn't the right choice, and this version of the deck I didn't play competitively. This was more of a casual, just having fun kind of a deck. But I did enjoy the Vampiric Link. It's a great card. It's a lot like Spirit Link. It's the mirror image of Spirit Link. So it's an enchant creature, and whenever the enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. Now, when it says you, it means the controller of the enchantment. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't think it through. So it's not the same as lifelink. Let me explain the difference. So obviously, if you put this on your own creature, that's probably the ideal situation. You are then gaining life for every point of damage that creature deals. That would be similar to lifelink. However, this is an enchantment. You can play it on your opponent's creatures. And if you do, you're the one that gains life for the damage that that creature does, because you control the enchantment. That is not like lifelink. So this can effectively neutralize one of your opponent's attacking creatures. If they, play a big creature, you can put Vampiric Link on it, and every point of damage that it does, you'll gain life for it. Now, it's better to play it on your own creature, then you can do damage and gain life, but it's nice to have that flexibility. It was really here because I have so many creatures that can do quite a bit of damage, and I wanted to gain life from it. Also because at that point, heavy creature-based decks weren't as big of a concern for me, so I could get rid of one of each of these and the manipulators and not feel too bad about it. Okay, so that's the evolution of this Mono Black Aggro deck. I think I called this version Dark Juggernaut or something, like back when deck names were a popular thing to come up with. I didn't really have names way back in the 90s for stuff. I just put it together and played it. So that's how it worked. I just wanted to share one of my decks from way back when and how it's evolved through the years. And I did revisit this for old school, and I'll make that into another video. So that's coming up soon. Talk to you later.